Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I've got a random question for you all listening today. Do we have any skiers listening to this podcast? Because I've got to be honest, in over 1,550 interviews, I think this is the first time that we've ever talked about ski tech. And ski fans will know Bode Miller, two-time overall World Cup champion and six-time Olympic medalist, recently announced the upcoming launch of his new tech venture, SKEO, which is the world's most accessible digital ski platform, powered by a physician-led Swiss startup, Snowcookie Sports. And they invite every user to analyse and improve their skills, exchange stats, embrace safety, and enjoy their time on the slopes. But behind all those big headlines, the concept was pioneered by Martin Kawalski, CEO of Snowcookie Sports and European physician with a Ph.D. in neuroscience. I think there's so much to dig into here. We've got a lot to talk about, so buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Switzerland, where we can learn all about this great story and the impacts that it's having and how it's helping skiers improve their technique, safety, and so much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hey Neil, great. Thanks for having me. I'm a physician, a sleep medicine physician turned entrepreneur. You could say that I used to help people sleep better, and now I help them ski better. I'm a CEO and founder of SKEO, a startup that develops wearables and apps which enable what I call connected skiing.
And there's so many things I'm excited to explore with you today, but I must begin really by asking, what is the story behind you wanting to combine technology and analytics to transform the world of skiing? Because I feel there's got to be a big story there.
Fair question. I'm afraid it's really quite simple though. Several years ago, I was still working on my Ph.D. In sleep medicine. What that means is, I was trying to develop an algorithm that would detect sleep apnea in children with nothing but your smartphone. Typically, you need super sophisticated equipment and lots of sensors, and I wanted to simplify all of that. And every weekend, every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would spend in my lab applying various sensors to my patients. And one of the sensors that I would very often use is a body position sensor, like a little cube that I would put on the chest. And it would tell me, when do certain sleep disturbances occur and how do they correlate to body position. In my little, spare time, I'm a passionate skier. And that got me thinking, hey, what if I could use that sensor outside a hospital setting and discover something interesting about my skiing? So this was the very kernel, the very beginning of the idea.
And if we look around at sport now, I think just about every sport is dominated by technology. For example, if we look at football, every player will be wearing a sensor of some kind of that will track everything that they do on the field and how far they travel exactly. So I'm curious, how have you seen technology play an increasing role in the world of skiing?
I'm going to answer that, but probably not in a way you expect. I'm going to go a little further back, not dive into electronics and wearables. When I got involved in this whole connected skiing adventure, I started it by doing research in the evolution of skiing equipment. And one thing that really stood out to me is how the nature of ski-related injuries has been evolving over the years, and how that correlates with the evolution of ski boot and ski boots and ski bindings. So I'm not sure if you're a skier, but let's just say that 30, 40 years ago, ski boots were semi-rigid. Mm-hmm. They could flex a lot in the ankle joint, and that means orthopedic surgeons would very often see injuries in the lower leg. Now, as the technology progressed and we now enjoy very safe but also fairly rigid ski boots, the rate of ankle injuries plummeted, whereas now we see torn ligaments in the knee joints and higher up the musculoskeletal chain. That's been certainly an interesting angle on how technology in skiing evolves and what it implies in terms of safety.
And for people that are hearing about SKEO for the first time, can you share with the listeners a little bit more about exactly what SKEO is and the kind of problems that you set out to solve with it?
When I started, I used my medical training and looked at everything through the medical perspective lens. I wanted to make skiing safer. I found a paper in orthopedic medicine talking about the correlation between muscle fatigue and the rate of ski-related injuries. In simpler terms, the more tired you are, the higher the risk, the higher the chances of getting injured. So the very first mission, the very first goal I set to accomplish was, hey, why don't I try to build a system that would measure muscle fatigue in real time and then warn you when it predicts that you're approaching this point where your technique is getting progressively worse and worse. It's time to call it a day. Interestingly, my co-founder Peter and I were super lucky to have some amazing mentors along the way, and one of them was Guy Kawasaki. So we pitched the whole idea to him. He's not a big skier, but he listened intently, and then he says, "Guys, have you ever met any young guy who lost it for Toyota Prius?" And we were like, whoa, what does that have to do with anything? And then he says, "Safety alone isn't sexy. Build more." And this was the beginning of when SKEO, originally Snowcookie, started evolving into more than a safety tool, but something that will help you unlock your best self on snow.
What a great story. And we had Guy Kawasaki on this podcast, and he's a great guy.
I know that, yeah. I noticed that on your website. I was really excited to share that with you.
Yeah, I love it. And he's one of those guys you could just listen to for hours, and especially around topics such as innovation. And here in 2021, SKEO has evolved into a digital ski platform that measures, coaches, and ranks your skiing to enable users to level up. But can you walk me through how a listener could get up and running and the optional wearable sensors upgrades as well? Because there's so much that you're doing here, isn't there?
Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. Yeah. It's really quite simple. You can get started very, very quickly by downloading a completely free SKEO app, whether it's iOS or Android. It doesn't cost anything. It offers some basic tracking. Not that this is difficult to do, but we added something interesting. You may know that we have an amazing team member, Bode Miller, one of the most accomplished US male skier in history. Joined forces with us because he very much agrees and our vision resonates with him of how we bring technology to skiing. And he pushed us and challenged us to develop something called UAR, Universal Alpine Ranking. Think of it as a golf handicap system applied to skiing where anybody can receive an objective measurement of his or her skiing. And we built the very first version of that into the free app. And then if you want more in-depth information, what are my edge angles? How do my hips, what's my hip angulation when I ski? All the fancy skiing parameters talking about your technique. Then you may upgrade to a sensor version, just connect it to the app, put the little cookies, we call them cookies, they're kind of like Oreo-sized sensors on your skis, and then you wear one on your body to capture upper body movements.
And I'm curious, what kind of data and stats does SKEO collect? Just for any skiers that could be listening there, thinking, what kind of information is it capturing?
That's a fair question. We always start with the very basic information derived from GPS. Something anybody can do with a phone these days. So that's speed, distance, elevation. But at every point, and we sample at 50 times per second, 50 hertz, we do a fancy term, sensor fusion. So we would merge your position with motion data from all 3 cookies. So we have this stream of sort of 4 channels merged together. For example, accelerometers on the skis tell me how hard you've been pressing the skis into the ground, while a gyroscope on your chest looks at the torso orientation through every phase of the turn.
Love that. And can you tell me a little bit more about the proprietary algorithm? Because I believe that can help fine-tune body position, edge control, and improve safety like never before. But ultimately, it is an algorithm, isn't it, that helps this?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is the engine, the core of the product. A good way of thinking about it is that context is the king here. Let me explain this, because just a single data point alone isn't very, very valuable in skiing. So let's look at this in the following way. A body position sensor, a little cookie that you wear on your chest, among other things, can tell you if you're leaning forward or backward. One of the very, very basics in skiing. Now, the sensors on the skis can differentiate between carving, for example, and skidding and staying on your edges. So imagine you're going on a really steep section of a hill. Now, I'm a fairly good skier, but imagine that when I approach this really steep section, I have this subconscious fear, and I lean backward. The sensor picks it up, and at the same time, the sensors on the skis see that the quality of my edge control dropped because I'm not putting enough weight there. And these are the kind of correlations that we are looking. We're putting several observations together, and try to make you more aware, to increase the awareness of why you're doing certain things and what implications does that have for your technique and your skiing style.
And do you have any customer stories who have compared their data from what they were like before as a beginner or a fairly good skier to how they are or how good they are now? Do you get to hear any stories like that?
So perhaps I'll tell you there first something else. Interestingly, I very often see that whenever people put on SKEO sensors first, and that only happens in cases where I know these skiers and I know their style and I have seen them ski before. So they put on the sensors and they instantly are better skiers. I kid you not, 5 minutes and they're better skiers. And obviously our technology cannot provide that. I don't think anything can. But what we believe we're seeing here is sort of the observer effect. People know that they're being monitored. Every aspect of their technique is being analyzed, and they try extra hard. That's like instant gratification, instant improvement. That's very fun to watch. But the other story that I can share is a few years back, while still developing we're still in the prototype phase, I was skiing with one of my mentors and investors. And without naming the brands, I was on a pair of very nice Swiss-made skis. Suffice to say, you can imagine they're fairly expensive. And the gentleman in question was on a pair of French skis. I'm not here to have any debate on the superiority of Swiss skis over French skis, but you can understand that the Swiss ones were more expensive. So my mentor commented "Hey, Martin, how is it that you have such expensive skis and I'm your investor?" And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So I politely offered him to change the skis and see what's going on. And then we realized that instantly after same run, same slope, snow was very comparable because that was only 10-15 minutes of difference. The scores of my investor went some 25-27% up, the quality of his skiing. And this is when we realized that everyone has a particular style, but you don't always select the best equipment for yourself. And that can be helped with the technology can help with that. That was really, really interesting to see that, like, hey, we can scientifically prove superiority of a given model or a given type of ski for your particular style.
What a great story. And I also read that your ultimate goal is to deliver cutting-edge technology that not only educates skiers on their technique, but also inspires them to level up if they're eager to improve. But I've got to ask, what excites you most about SKEO now?
Neil, I believe we're adding a new dimension to skiing. Skiing is a wonderful sport. It already is fun. So I'm not trying to make it more fun. I think that would be full of hubris to attempt to do so. But we can make it more interesting. We can give you a purpose. Let me give you a quick analogy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with indoor cycling.
Yeah.
There is a fabulous company that's based in London, I believe, Zwift. They gamified indoor skiing. I'm a huge fan. They exploded over the last year as we all were locked up in our apartments and houses, and they gamified indoor cycling. They gave people a purpose to what otherwise was a very boring activity. And we'd like to take some inspiration from those guys and offer workout content for your skiing to make you ski with a purpose. Today I'm working on this. This is how I'm going to improve. This is the path that leads me to mastering new skills.
I love that attitude that you've got there. And you did mention a few moments ago that you class yourself modestly as a fairly good skier, but do you ever stop to think about how better you could have been if SKEO was available when you were much younger? And are there any tips or advice that you would leave to anybody listening to this conversation? It could be anywhere in the world right now. Is there anything you would pass on?
Neil, I really want to think I'm an okay skier, but I can't. I cannot possibly hold even a shadow of a candle to Bode. So that's really a question for Bode Miller for any tips and suggestions how to or advice for future Olympians. But I suppose I could tell you this, even though it's cliche, you cannot improve what you don't measure, what you don't see. If I were to define our mission these days, it's like, hey, whatever tools you're using, be extra diligent about documenting, cataloging, recording your workout sessions, your progress. Whether it's SKEO or any other app or a pen and paper, you can't improve what you don't measure.
Completely agree with you on that. And I know that was a tricky question for you to answer for a modest guy such as yourself. But one question I know you can answer is something I always ask my guests at the end of every episode is there a particular song that has inspired you, helped you in your career, helped you or remind you of technology, or maybe a song that you just want to play loud when you hit the slopes? Is there a particular song that springs to mind there for the Tech Talks Daily Spotify playlist?
I love that question, Neil. Yes, there is. It's Free Animal by Foreigner. It's a wonderful song. It's almost my number one on my free riding playlist. I love it so much, and so do my teammates, that we actually created our own curated Spotify playlist. So if you need some extra inspiration next time you hit the slopes, just check us out on Spotify, and I'm sure that Free Animal is among the very top songs over there.
I will add that link to the blog post that will accompany this episode. But for anyone listening here that would like to find out more information about SKEO or contact your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Oh, just head to our website, please. It's Snowcookie Sports. It's all written together, snowcookiesports.com.
Well, I've loved chatting with you. I feel like there's unfinished business. We need to get Bode on there to talk about his experiences, and we also could debate the differences between French and Swiss skis. I feel there's a whole debate there, isn't there?
I would love that.
But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. That was a pleasure, Neil. Thanks so much.
I just love the story behind this. You know, intrigued by the idea of a smart connected ski and reoccurring winter ski injuries, and how that inspired today's guest. And winter ski injuries that he saw during his orthopedic rotations inspired today's guest to shift his focus to hone in on education and preventability measures. And then turning to technology and proprietary algorithms to fine-tune body position, edge control and improve safety like never before, SKEO was then able to enable skiers of all levels to go farther and faster while mitigating risks. I mean, how cool is that? But to all the skiers listening to this podcast today, I'd love to hear your thoughts about ski tech, technology in sport, and also the difference between French, Swiss and US skis. But I suspect that is a whole other podcast episode right there. And also, if you've got any questions, anything you want to share, or any songs you'd like to add to the Tech Talks Daily Spotify playlist, as long as you've got a great story to back it up, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.